Welcome to this week's weekly market data update. I'm Jennifer Suzuki, president of eDealer Solutions. We're a digital and phone sales training company. Got some great guys on today. We have Len Short, who better than to learn from a man who's built his company, managing numbers that can help us forecast and prepare for what's ahead. Len Short is here today, and he's going to help us navigate this week's data. I'm super excited to have our next speaker on, Gary LaDue. He is a marketing director for Modern Automotive Group, and he's going to share some of his insights on market conditions. He's part of a dealer group that's comprised of 14 dealerships. They've got 10 franchises spread out over 4 different markets. And Gary lives in North Carolina. He's marketing and advertising strategist with a passion for financial performance, branding, communications, and customer centricity. Very excited to hear what he has to say about how their business operations are evolving and changing. Each week we can look at data and we can watch the trends, we can plan properly. We're going to cover today the numbers that have changed, national numbers week over week, and what's trending. We'll take a look at the best performing markets, those slower to recover, and we'll ask Gary some insights as to what's going on in his group. Then we'll take a look at our VBO insights, look at some live markets with Lynn, and overall, we're mid-May right now, and we're seeing it settling to a typical level. 75% of the US markets are achieving volumes exceeding their pre-COVID sales pace. 127 markets ended this week in positive territory. Now only 35 markets continue to lag. This week we observed the highest pace of improvement so far, with 157 markets moving up and only 8 markets losing ground. So that's 46 markets had consecutive week over week gains. 19 went up flat to up. 62 reversed last week's downward trend and ended this week in positive territory. Nationwide overall, sales were up, ending the week just 3.9% behind the COVID pace. New car sales trended slightly up week over week, but still trailing the pre-pandemic pace by negative 6.2%. Now, used cars, they seem to continue to lead the recovery, ending the week just 0.4% below the pre-COVID sales pace. Last week's volatility gave way to more stable trends as markets return to the new normal. Curves are flattening, but remain generally modestly improving. We are hearing a lot from our dealer clients, and this week I hear a lot of talk continuing to focus on pickup and delivery, and now those expenses that are involved in those services. All eyes are on auction sales and the depreciation still standing on used cars. Many unsure how OEM new car deliveries will unfold, and with the weakening of the economy and unemployment at an all-time high, the question remains, how will vehicle sales play out? And to this point, I thought maybe we'd pull the audience real quick and ask about their inventory concerns by July. And while we're polling and you're submitting your answer, Gary, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
What's your level of concern about new car inventory?
I don't think we really have a concern as of yet. Used car sales have been strong. And of course, the sale of new cars with trades always help us kind of manage that inventory. I think it's really going to depend on how quick the business ramps back up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also going to depend on what happens with consumers choosing used or new during that process. The end of April was a little bit better than we anticipated. We expected May to be a little better. It has been so far. We expect June to be a little bit better. So by the time we get to July, I think that's really going to be the indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Going to depend on just what happens with the demand.
Okay. Yeah, so you can see the poll results here on the screen, and the majority of people uh, do foresee it becoming an issue for July. We will find out.
Yeah, so we've been tracking, as part of our core platform, we've got a view into, everything that's going on in the market and, every store in the country. So we see the supply side, pricing moves, volumes, inventory levels, sales pace, et cetera. And then we also see the demand side, the hundreds of millions of things that happen a day and, in automotive digital. And really our technology boils that down to, tracking who the real buyers are and where they are in the process. That's the most important thing, is sorting through all of those actions, down to who's the real buyer and where are they in the stage, so you can target your message to them. So, we opened that up as part of this, our response to COVID, to let dealers have a market by market brand view of what's actually happening in their environment. We thought it'd be nothing more important than knowing really how sales are pacing in their market, and we've had a overwhelming response. What we've been seeing is generally sales fell off sharply and hit a bottom first week of April, but have steadily recovered since then. And talking to our dealers and collecting information, I think dealers are probably the most adaptable business set of business people in any category, and I think they learned how to get by in this marketplace, and they got as they could serve customers, that sales pace kind of picked up. What we saw on the demand side is very high demand right through this. So there was a big gap between the sales that were happening because of the restrictions that were out there, and the number of consumers that meant to purchase. And that green line is essentially their engagement, their where they are in terms of actually wanting to execute a sale. And you can see that was running even higher than the pace of buyers in the marketplace. So it looked like a pent up, classic picture of pent up demand. And as sales have improved, those lines have come together. Normally they run sort of in parallel. They bounce around, but they're kind of running on track, and you can see it spread apart for quite some time. But what was good to see is a positive, continued increases through April. A little bit of sideways motion the first couple of weeks of this month, but we resumed that returning trend. Thing we've been watching closely is the used car volumes, and there was a lot of speculation that the used car business was going to suffer, and actually the numbers contradict that. That used cars have continued to be stronger actually than even the new car sales, and even with the heavy manufacturer incentives on new cars. So there's a very good pace, for used car sales, and that's what we're hearing from our dealers. And that I think bodes well if it's true that we're going to suffer some, inventory challenges for a month or two. I mean, I heard from our, the Ford people that there'll be new inventory on trucks by the end of this month, so they'll be filling in fast. I don't know what the other, different manufacturers in different situations, but that should fill in relatively quickly, and they'll work through this. But the used car demand and is high. The challenge is supply there. A lot of dealers opted to bring down their used car inventory levels as this whole pandemic hit, and now they're trying to recapture those inventory levels, and the auctions have been challenged and so on. So there are some in some places challenges with that. We've seen markets move around. You can see as last week we saw most of the leading markets in Pennsylvania, because that market started to open up. You can still, Erie is still up there, Wilkes-Barre. Michigan markets are coming back. So there's you can see that as markets open up, that the sales pace moves, and hopefully that's we're going to continue to open up and circulate, and customers are going to be able to follow through with their purchase intent, and we'll all see what the economy does and how that impacts the sales pace long term, what the new normal is in terms of SAR. It's probably a good guess that it won't be the 16.9 that was projected for this year. But the lines are moving in a very positive direction. So hopefully we continue to see that that continued improvement. This, I want to point out, is not adjusted for seasonality. We thought we marked everything versus the sales pace going into the COVID crisis. So we averaged the 4 weeks, and we had a very good March, by the way. The first half of March was great. So, we looked at, okay, that's where we were when this thing hit. So what does it take to get back to where we were, when we entered this? And that's what that black line is. So you can see, sales kind of popped up or, running right at that sales pace nationally. So it's, May, tends to be a little bit stronger than February, right? So seasonally adjusted, there's still probably a gap between where we'd want to be and where we are now. But, we're back to where we left off when this whole thing hit.
And the black line that you were seeing there, that's the pre-COVID level. Yeah,
we kind of took a weighted average of the national sales pace and just decided to mark everything. Hey, this is what we were doing before this thing hit us. So what's it take to get back to where we were? So there's a lot of up and down movement. Last week Reno was the #1 improver, and this week it was down. I don't know what's going on in Reno, but it's very much a rolling recovery. Not even though the overall nationally, the large part of the nation is doing okay. There are still some significantly challenged markets, and within those markets there are dealers. We talked to a dealer a couple of weeks ago on this call who was in basically the Boston market, which is still a hard hit market, and he was having hit a record weekend. So even if you're in a tough market, there are dealers who are finding ways of winning and kind of maintaining their pace. So it's it's very dynamic, and it's very very local on what's going on. So for instance, this is Phoenix. Phoenix held up just fine through this whole thing. There were a lot of big markets that were basically only marginally affected. It wasn't a national crisis in terms of sales. It was highly localized. So, and here's the numbers on used. You can see used is outpacing new, and there's been a nice steady recovery of that, and that's good news, for dealer profitability and also the ability to fill in any new car inventory challenges for the short term that dealers have. I mean, the market's there, so as long as you've got the inventory, probably manage through that.
It's interesting that it's not real far off from pre-COVID levels.
Yeah. So I think it's good. Generally, good news. That's hard to say because there are certainly people out there on the phone where their markets are still struggling. So it very very much matters where you are. So.
Yeah, well, it's nice states are starting to, remove those shelter restrictions. And I would say, floor traffic seems to be gaining momentum. Digital retailing is gaining momentum. Many have inventory. So I'm actually wondering what our audience is thinking right now. Some without access to live auctions, some with access. My clients are not seeing as many trade-ins from customers. And I don't know if that's something that's trending, but I keep hearing that, consumer fear maybe is rising. Let's ask a quick question to our audience here. Are you having a hard time acquiring used inventory right now? And while we're waiting for that, again, Gary, very grateful for your time today. Tell me, are you guys having a hard time getting used car inventory right now?
Yeah, I mean, It's not really a gigantic struggle, but we will typically get a lot of trades off of new car sales, and with used car sales being so strong, we're getting less trades.
Mhm.
Some of the auctions are open, so we do have access to them. Wholesale prices were predicted to be really low and aggressive, but we're not seeing that. So, it's a little bit of a challenge. We've kind of taken it upon ourselves to start pushing campaigns to incent trade-ins. So if we can contact a customer through an email campaign or other forms, to try and push new car incentives to get them to trade up, trade in, trade up, then we're doing that. And that's really on a market by market, store by store basis where it's needed.
Okay. Okay. So you have some stores that are going to auctions. Is that something that's changed? Has much changed there?
So we have a used car director that really helps the stores kind of manage their inventory of used.
Okay.
And he keeps a pretty close pulse on what's going on with all of the live auctions. I did talk to him this morning, and he was participating in a live auction yesterday that was out in Dallas, and he said it was almost a fight for people to try and get cars because people just need them. So.
Mhm. So how are you handling that? I mean, what's kind of stirring as far as your general manager's discussions on, what do you do?
Well, like I said, for us, we're trying to use new car incentives in order to drive more trade-ins. We're getting cars off of auction or off of rentals, wherever it makes sense for us. The pricing's got to be right. The model's got to be right for our market. The demand has to be there for it. So, our inventory is definitely trending down a little bit right now versus where it usually is. That is really driven by just the outright strong performance we've seen in used for, about the last 3 weeks.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So you can see some of the results here for the poll. Are you having a hard time acquiring used inventory right now? A lot of different obstacles people are faced with right now. It seems a lot's going to potentially happen. I mean, we hear a lot of, Hertz unloading inventory from their fleet, defleeting those rental cars. We hear of the delayed lease returns coming in. All these things may, affect this market in the months to come. I thought maybe we would take a look at
Sure.
some of your markets here and get maybe Linda to share what he sees here.
Yeah, so it looks like, Greensboro sales pace has been strong, and so as has demand and intent to purchase. So I think before the call we were saying that you were holding up, basically, with your year ago sales numbers, and that would it makes sense given the that market and the the amount of demand and transactions that were happening there. So Gary, does this look like what it feels like on the ground to you in terms of sales pace and customer customer demand?
I mean, our sales volume is definitely off versus last year. What I think we're seeing is the uptick, is happening, which is really, really positive. So, I think what we were speaking about before the webinar started was we had kind of forecasted April to be a certain number, and we basically hit that number. And so we felt really positive walking into May, and that positivity is, that reality, it's become reality. We were having a pretty good May, but those numbers are they're still down versus what we were doing last year at this time. So you know, we predict it'll be a slow climb. It all depends on, you know, what's going on in your market. In April, we had 4 different stores that were forced to close, could only sell cars, you know, online or through a phone call transaction, and then had to deliver. You know, we kind of pressed forward through that, and now all of the showrooms are open. The governor lifted stay-at-home orders May 8th, and so now here we are 12 days after that, and things are looking okay. But we still got a ways to go, and I think regardless of, you know, what market you're in around the country, it's going to be the same kind of tone and feel. But the actual results are going to vary, I think, pretty dramatically by market.
Yeah. Yeah, and I should remind myself, this is, you know, up versus February, right? But February is, you know, usually a, you know, slower part of the year. So
Right.
in terms of May over May, it's, you know, we're still trailing about 15%.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's, yeah.
But I mean, you know, the business coming back is a nice, you know, pleasant reality right now.
Yeah, the big question is where do we settle in terms of, you know, the economy and the, you know, the long-term SAR, you know, how far, you know, it's good to see this general improvement, you know, and hopefully that keeps going
Right.
all the way back to 19.
Yeah. Unemployment is huge, but as, you know, local markets open back up and employers hire people back, you know, how quick does that occur? And then when those people are hired back, how quick is it that they're, you know, back to a more normal level of living? And what does that do to affect everything that they spend money on, you know? So there's going to be a lot of variables that play into what happens with the overall number for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the strongest constants in life, though, is the power of the American consumer. So when they can be back, they'll be back. You know, that happens every time. So, you know, thank God for that. You know, you mentioned that you were leaning on an incentive strategy, which is a very smart thing to be doing at this time, especially with the dollars that are coming from the OEM. Any signals about how they're going to continue those programs through the summer? Or are they going to back off those, you know, because of inventory shortages?
I don't really know yet. You know, some of those incentives are really, really strong. I mean, GM's offering 0% for 84 months to qualified buyers. And I think the threshold to meet the 84 months at 0% is pretty high, but nonetheless, it's a pretty big incentive. You know, Nissan and Toyota are doing some of the same things with no payments for a few months. I expect that to I anticipate that to maintain at least through summer. I'd be really, really surprised if it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, let's hope that that's the case. I agree with you. But, you know, of course, they don't announce that until early each month, you know.
Right.
Kind of, yeah, so we'll see. But I'd kind of lean toward a bet that they'll keep it up, you know, keep the pace going. So I agree with that.
They want to move metal as much as the dealers do, you know.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned, I'm looking at some of those numbers on the screens there, and you know, you mentioned you know, not being too far off, but I'm wondering, you know, you're in marketing. How have your stores adapted to digital retailing, and has that made an impact in being able to, you know, keep your sales numbers, you know, flowing?
Yeah.
Has impacted
So that's a really long answer. I will try to keep it short. You know, it varies per store, per market for us a little bit, but generally speaking, we have been kind of experimenting with digital retail solutions since last year. You know, I think there's always been plugins and technology on websites where consumers could work a deal. That's been around for a really, really long time. Even, you know, just basic calculators on websites can help do that. for us, I think we've been exploring going to the next level and trying to figure out what tool is going to work the best for our network. So before all this started, the COVID situation, we began testing a couple of different providers, and we're still in the middle of that test right now. So we have 3 or 4 different tools we're testing at various stores, various markets. And once we come out of the other side of the test, our goal is to get to 1 tool. If we get to 2, I'll be happy. So does it help? Yeah, I think it helps. It depends on how the store uses it, from not just the online interaction with the consumer, but how the BDC uses it, if you have a BDC, how the salespeople use it, if they're interacting with it at all. So, there's promising things there. I'll say before the shutdown situation, we were also already doing things like delivering cars if somebody wanted to buy from a distance and then just have us deliver the car. We've been doing that all along. So for us to kind of have to change processes in order to accommodate the situation, it was easier at some stores than it was at others for us because they've already been doing it. So for us, it was really more about how do we make sure we get the message out there about what we can do and what our capabilities are, and what's that message going to look like. And even now that we're a couple of months into the situation, we continue to refine that. So you can go to any one of our websites right now and see all of the different safety precautions that we're taking, and you can see all of the different services we're offering in order to be safe. But we continue to refine that message and refine how it shows up on our websites and in our advertising in order to make it simple for the consumer. I think the first part of the process was for us to make sure people knew, number one, we were open, number two, we were being as safe as we possibly could. And as we continue going forward, we'll still want to make sure that we're communicating that. But as we bring on these digital retailing tools and these tests, it'll be more about refining the message for the future, which is shop at home, right? So how do we say that? What does that look like? Where do we put it on the site? How do we advertise it? All of those things are coming to fruition kind of right now. So it's been really interesting.
A lot of my clients, we talk about this evolution, and in the first, 4 weeks of this, it was every day things changing, constant monitoring, battling new challenges. It was just high anxiety. I feel like things are starting to feel a little more stable this week. But with having digital retailing come to the forefront and offering those services to people, which I am the kind of buyer that I like delivery. I like all things efficient, and I tend to find myself spending a little bit more money when service picks up my car. If they say I've got something wrong with it, I'm like, oh, let's do it. I'm in. Or when I'm purchasing a vehicle, I'm more likely to add on something because I'm not having to spend my time going there and feeling the value that the dealer's able to give me. I'm wondering, and we'll pull the audience here too. Are you holding as much gross or more gross, specifically on used cars, than you were pre-COVID? And while everyone's answering this question, do you have an opinion on this for your group?
Yeah, I think used cars are always a means for dealerships to drive a little bit better gross.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is always to make money. That's what we're here for. I don't think our gross right now is better than it was pre-COVID.
Okay.
Our goal was to make sure that we weren't sitting on aged inventory.
Yes.
I think everybody kind of, like Len had said, anticipated that used car volume would really slow,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't. So You know, we put initiatives in place in order to move used, and we're still doing that now. But we'll be in a situation where we're going to have to rebuild that inventory. It's always a balance.
Okay, well, thanks for your feedback on that. Let's see what we got here. So let's see. Audience is saying about the same for more gross, same gross, and a few of you less gross. There's a program that I looked at that LotLinx offers. It's called the VinView Optimizer, and you know, as we start to dial in on, you know, again, you know, you're trying to offset inventory costs, unsure of what is to come in, you know, our future here in the future months with inventory. We'll take a look at another market here using the VinView Optimizer, which, by the way, guys, it's free to dealers. Everyone that's listening, this is a competitive advantage in my opinion. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved in doing these weekly webinars. I'm always looking for ways to add value to our dealer clients, and this is one of them. And as everyone sort of starts to dial into their inventory, you know, this is a tool that can help move your inventory, and again, it's free. So what I found is that dealers that use this, they consistently say it's their secret sauce, it's their secret weapon. Maybe Len, we could look at, maybe you could show us what it looks like and help us better understand what the data is showing up, what the data is showing us.
So anyway, this is what we call this VDO, and what it does is it plots every live unit that a dealer has, and then it shows all of the VDP views for any period of time, you know, that each of those units have had and what the source. So, you know, direct, organic, other programs. It even shows offsite views. If they, you know, are an Auto Trader customer, for instance, this dealer uses Auto Trader, so you can see, you know, those black lines are the views that have happened on that piece of inventory offsite, you know, on the Auto Trader platform. And, you know, so it allows the dealer to look at, you know, essentially what he's invested in driving traffic to a specific VIN, how is it doing, and largely, you know, it varies by brand and market, but largely to achieve the sales space that you need every one of your units to be viewed essentially once a day. 30 VDP views in a month is a great goal, you know, sort of a tipping point. Once you achieve that level, you know, things start to really move. And if you're under that, they're being under-engaged, and you're not driving the audience and the shopping engagement you need to move the inventory that you have. And so that's what this red line is. It shows that 30 views in a month line. And as you can see, this deal, as I say, is a very big, very successful, very sophisticated independent dealer, you know, 1,232 units on lot. And you can see that, you know, they're driving views literally to every piece of their inventory. There's only a small set that's kind of falling below that line. And if you pick out any one of these, you know, here's a Jeep, 2017 Jeep Cherokee that, you know, came on. It's got 21,000 miles. You know, it came on at $17,999. They dropped price $2,100 to $15,899. It's been on lot for 132 days. But it's, you know, achieving that tipping point. And what dealers do is they can sort their inventory by inventory strategy. So for instance, if they want to look at all the units that they drop price on, this shows, now you can see each one of these red dots. This is a unit that they've moved price on, and it automatically fills that there are 121 under-engaged units that they're dropping price on. You can see they're dropping price more for these aged units, under-engaged units. And, you know, what they can do is then execute a strategy to drive incremental, you know, low funnel buyers to those units and move them off the lot. So it gives them control, you know, down to an inventory level. You know, it starts with the car and says, this is what the car needs. Let's now use all the digital channels to drive in the highest, you know, value shopping interactions against that car so we can move it, which is kind of a flip of how people traditionally think about advertising. They tend to start with, well, the medium, you know, with Facebook. What do I spend on Facebook? What do I put on Facebook? And and then, I see where that trickles down onto my lot. And what often is seen is that, the clicks you get out of an advertising program tend to bunch up on the cars that you don't really need help with, and you leave things underserved, most of your inventory underserved. So I'm going to show you that. Here's another dealer, big dealer in a Midwestern hard shutdown market, tough time up there. This is all of their inventory, and you can see they got 987 units, new and used, on lot, and you can see that, 3/4 of them are under engaged, and fully half of them, look at down here, fully half of them, almost half of them haven't been viewed at all. And you look at them. Here's a Chevy Equinox on lot for 102 days, and it's never had anybody take a look at it. So, it's going to be tough to sell that car if nobody's, shopping that car. And now more than ever, right? This is what I'm hearing from all dealers, and very sophisticated dealers say, hey, listen, this is just, this whole COVID thing has just accelerated this. If people aren't on my inventory identifying it, engaging with it online, they're not picking up the phone, and most of that intent was happening before online. They would then show up and buy at my lot. Now that's what's leading to the online, interaction. Now more of the purchase is happening, off the VDP page, essentially, and in the interactions that I'm having over the phone with them. So it's, more important than ever to be driving, those buyers to that inventory, letting them engage, and then start the conversation, sometimes even finish the conversation, before they show up at the store. And, the guys that I think, the most of in the business, and, are saying to me, listen, this has changed everything, and it's not going back. This is how the consumer wants to be served. So, all it's done is accelerate us into a new future. And, when we go back to normal, the business will have been changed, and, hopefully we can make it more efficient. Anyway, so this dealer, if you look at his used inventory, is having less trouble on used. And that's, so even in this tough market, you can see he's got, a little bit better engagement on his used inventory. He's got 148 units. We can look at his sales pace for this month. But on new, this points out, essentially what the key issue for most dealers are. He's got, most of his inventory, only a small number of those 839 new units are being viewed, and most of his inventory is just not being touched. And if it's not being, viewed, it doesn't sell. You mentioned GM's, consumer cash offers. These are the units that he has, on lot that have, that consumer cash component, or, and he can look at that. If he's chasing the stair step, he can look at the dealer cash component. There isn't anything, right now, and essentially execute a strategy against that. But we're offering this to any dealer who wants it, and you will not get a sales pitch for you, but if we can set you up very easily so you can start looking at your inventory this way and start making decisions about what's working for you to drive those, online interactions, that, that connection with your inventory that's going to lead to the sale. And, what of your programs are contributing to that, where you need, maybe, some more help. And I promise you, if you raise your hand and say, yeah, I'd like to get set up on that, we will not chase you. It's not a trap. We will not pitch you. We'll get you set up. If you want, we can show you how to use it. I've got to say, almost without an exception, the dealers who see this and start playing with it, call it a secret weapon. And so I think you'll get a lot, as you're waiting, managing through now and in the future, how do you come back in terms of advertising? How do you rejigger that strategy so that you're doing the most with every dollar that you're spending? And it's going to be a game of efficiency going forward, right? I think you'll find this tool very, very useful, and we just thought we'd open it up to, in the spirit of just kind of trying to support people. If anybody finds some interest in this and wants to, use it, we'd happily make it available. And, you will not get chased by us. We'll just get you set up. That's my promise to you. So please just ping anybody on this call, send us a text or an email if you want to get set up. It's a very simple process. We'll get this set up for you and give you access. By the way, when we give you access, there's a whole raft of other tools that go along with this. I don't have time today to go through it, but you might find some usefulness in looking at what's happening competitively, who's selling units, how your units are aging versus your competitors' aging profile. A lot of that should feed into what your inventory and your promotional strategy is. As inventory ages out, it gets a lot harder to sell. A brand new F-150 just hit your lot, built exactly the same way as the one sitting next to it, that's 60 days old. The 60-day-old unit is twice as hard to sell. Sitting under right in the same lot, same sunlight and rain, it's going to need more of a push to move. And as it ages out, it gets tougher and tougher. So if your aging profile is, getting out of hand, you have to, find ways of getting attention to those units and move them off before they kind of drag you down. So there's a lot in this tool, and we'd be happy to, make it available and teach, and kind of take you through, what's here. And it's free to anybody who wants it. And we'd be happy to set that up. And you will not it is not a lead trap. We will not pitch it. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. I'm just curious, since we've got Gary on the phone, when you looked at that, what was sort of like something glaring that you noticed as a marketing director?
At this tool in particular?
Yes.
I just love the amount of detailed information that it provides. And it's really available at the click of a button. We are actually a LotLinx customer. We use them at I think 5 different stores right now. We've used them on and off in the past, and we have a great rep who's sat down with me in my office and gone over this tool with me a couple of times, and he keeps pushing me to use it and use it and use it more often, because it's got a lot of really great information. So as a matter of fact, he just checked in with me last week and said, "Hey, have you been using that tool?" And I haven't used it as much as I want to. So I think, given some of our strategies in the next month or so, it's probably time to dig in a little deeper.
Well, thanks for that. If anyone has any questions, now's a good time to type those in for myself or Len or Gary. With dealers driving more awareness to their sites, especially with the digital retailing services and those efforts, we're seeing traffic increase, we're seeing engagement go up, sales, growing, but there's still those concerns about used car values, since we're still seeing depreciating rates, and all of these things, I think, lead us to needing to see tools like this, using tools like this to just keep the finger on the pulse. It's data is important to help sort of decide, big choices that you're making with your marketing, and having good people and good processes in place always equals results.
Jennifer, I'd like to just add a point if I could. I think we've all kind of in our experiences through this process probably uncovered that, knowing what's going on in your own backyard is really, really important. As markets open up, they open up in different phases around the country, and all the way down to local municipalities. People's perspectives in each of those markets are going to be really very different, and that's going to influence how they shop, what they buy, how they buy. And so being really, really in tune with what's going on in your own backyard is so, so important. I think this tool really kind of helps to give some color to that. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate all the attendees. We've got a big group of people on here today, and appreciate you, Gary, for all of your time that you've shared with us and insights. I think, it's always helpful for us to just keep talking about what's occurring out there. So, no one's alone on this. We've got a lot of different things to be thinking about and big choices ahead. Every day is a different day, but we keep our finger on the pulse, and data can always, be a factor in those choices. So we will be back on next week with the latest updates and latest market trends. And I'm going to try, I've been working at the NADA Dealer Academy for the last 6 years, and I've made some really great friends. But what I love the most is during this time having these resources to just, people that have access to dealers across the country, talking to hundreds of them, week by week and hearing what's occurring in their stores. I'm going to try and get one of my colleagues to join us next week so we can get another perspective on the call. So thanks, Len, and thanks everybody for joining us today.